And happy podcasting day, gentlemen. It is the end of our 2021 season, and we are here to wrap it up. With me, as always, is Zeb and Ross. Gentlemen, how's it going?
Fantastic.
No more football, though, for Seahawks till August. That's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, but at least we got the playoffs.
Not our playoffs.
No, the playoffs. The NFL playoffs is my favorite. Even when we're not involved, it's my favorite time of year.
So, aside, before we jump into Seahawks stuff, apparently there's Monday night playoffs every week now.
Yes, I think just the one.
Is it just the one? Because I was kind of thinking, that's got to be so unfair. Playing a Saturday game and then getting to play a Sunday game, that's such a deal. But if you have to play a Sunday game and then you play a Saturday game, or if you play a Monday game and have to play on a Saturday, that's rough, man.
I assume that the winner of the Monday night game will not have to play the Saturday game the next week.
It's not a decided thing, so I think they would look at the results and then tell you.
I'm sure they took that into account to do.
They normally don't announce the playoff schedule until the games are won, right?
Well, yeah, we don't know the following weekend really until after the games have been played.
So before, on Monday, because Monday was never a thing, there was a early Saturday, a midday Saturday, and then on Sunday it's a midday Sunday and a late Sunday. So we would often play an early Saturday game when we were a wild card team. So we'd play the 11-12 o'clock game. Somewhere on the West Coast. I think when we played in Dallas and when we played in Minnesota, those were earlier games. And then we've played at home. We've either been on a Saturday or Sunday, one or evening game.
Right.
But yeah, Monday is going to kind of throw it off. But I think I love football, so I'll watch for sure. But yeah, it'll be different.
Yeah. I'm so. I don't know that it does anything for the game of football, for the NFL. I don't know that it helps or improves the quality of the game at all, but I'm not mad at having a Monday night playoff game.
I also want to say that the end of this year and all the drama in the AFC for those final two playoff spots, that was just chef's kiss. I watched that game. I was so invested in a tie. I was rooting for a tie so hard.
The Raiders-Chargers game?
Oh, yeah. That late Sunday night game. And when it was 22-29, I was like, oh, my God, the Chargers could tie this. Justin Herbert, make my dream come true. And they did. I was like, I enjoyed the game. I'm not happy with the outcome because I think, Brandon Staley just kind of screwed himself. But I thoroughly enjoyed that game. It was really entertaining. It was great back and forth. Both teams played really well. I was really impressed. And, I think everyone outside of Las Vegas and Pittsburgh was hoping for a tie. I feel like even LA Charger fans wanted a tie.
I have seriously never not been more disappointed at the outcome of a football game probably since 2014 when we lost the Super Bowl. Seriously, I was so upset that game did not end in a tie when it absolutely should have. An impossible tie. It should have happened, and they stole it from us.
Yeah,
I've been angry since it happened. I can't get over it.
So Zeb is invested. So I'm gonna strike while the iron is hot. Who do you blame for the game not ending in a tie?
It's absolutely because they called that timeout. 100% have no doubt that if they had not called that timeout, the Raiders were totally content in running that clock out. But once that timeout was called, They changed their minds completely, and I do not blame them at all for kicking that field goal because it was win-win for them.
Tony chiming in, he says likewise as well. So to play devil's advocate, I know Ross was playing this a little bit last week, but they still had a chance to stop them on third and 4 because they were the midfield. They were at the 30. They were at the 45-ish yard line on that 3rd and 4. So when they got 10 yards, they got them in great field goal range, but they still had a chance to stop them.
They called that timeout and they changed their personnel. They were ready to stop the run, and then they changed it.
They went into a nickel formation instead of keeping their middle linebacker in there, which I don't get. I don't understand.
It doesn't make any sense.
they're guarding against field goal range, but it's a dumb. I didn't care. I cared, but I sort of assumed it was like an impossible dream anyway. There was kind of like a running punchline all week long, and then so I didn't really care.
And it was right there. They are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook.
Yeah, classic Denny Green.
If you're gonna call the timeout, then at least you gotta. It's dumb to call the timeout. Probably. It's a little bit of a gamble.
They literally didn't get to go to the playoffs because of this. They literally were in the playoffs, and now they're not because they did this.
Well, the Raiders could have run the ball. It gets down to who you believe, because the Raiders coach is like, well, we were thinking of not running, but we probably were going to run anyway. And he's like, oh, they're stopping the clock, so we'll do it. But they might have run the play anyway. But
the Raiders, from their perspective, it's like, well, now we get to stick it to a division rival and get to the playoffs still. So, for them, there was no downside to it.
There was literally nothing that could happen unless on the field goal it was blocked and returned for a touchdown. That's literally the only thing that could have screwed the Raiders.
The other way around. Yeah, exactly.
Right? They were in the perfect position. So I respect the Raiders for taking that advantage, because if it were Seattle and we had the chance to go to the playoffs with the Cardinals, the Rams, or the 49ers in the same game that we're in, and then they give us a chance to get into field goal range after calling a timeout, I would 1,000% want the Seahawks to kick that field goal. I'm still upset that the Seahawks didn't score at the 1 yard line against Detroit 2 weeks ago. So, it's interesting to me that Zeb and I are so invested in this, in a game that really has nothing to do with the Seahawks. It's just a football game for two playoff teams.
Though. The reason why it does is because it would have kept the Steelers out of the playoffs. And as far as I'm concerned, that has something to do with the Seahawks.
That is definitely the thing that came up during the game that I was like, I really don't want to see Ben Roethlisberger in the playoffs. Tony says anything that keeps Pittsburgh out of the postseason. Birdfinger saying, preach, Tony.
Yep.
But
exactly.
Here's the thing, though. That Pittsburgh team looks so bad. I don't care who they play in the playoffs. They have to have a miracle game in order to win, and I just don't see that. And they have a bad matchup, too. Do they play like Kansas City, I want to say?
Yep.
So, Kansas City has been on a roll, and for whatever reason, the Steelers, they don't want to run the ball. They are anti-Najee Harris, and he's been having a pretty solid year. And they want to throw Ben Roethlisberger out there 50 times in a losing attempt.
They're trying to get him the Jerome Bettis treatment. Think about it. It's all set up, just like it was back then. They weren't even supposed to be in the playoffs.
Now you got me thinking conspiracy.
This narrative is deep in Zeb's mind, I feel like.
Yeah.
I'm pretty invested. But, I don't know. The fact that them and the 49ers both got in on, they shouldn't have been there, and they did, it just grinds my gears.
Yeah.
I kind of like the 49ers being in, though. I kind of like being, we are the toughest division. Because I was thinking more about it than I normally have. They keep talking about how great Tom Brady is and Aaron Rodgers, but we've talked the fact that Tom Brady spent most of his career getting to play 4 games a year versus the Jets and the Dolphins
and the Bills for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. That gets a lot of play, but I don't think we talk enough about how Aaron Rodgers plays 6 games a year against the Bears, the Vikings, and the Lions.
Right.
What would our record be if we got to play those people every year?
We kind of get to play that schedule next year in 2022. We get to play the Lions, the Giants, and the Jets. So
yeah. But I'm just saying, if every year we got to play the Lions twice, and every year we got to play the Bears twice, and every year we got to play the Vikings twice. Home field advantage every year, right?
To be fair, we did go 1-2 against those 3 teams this year. So
this year, yeah, but I'm talking normally.
I think that's what's interesting about the new NFL format. The only one team with a bye, you know, 3 wild card teams, 3 division winners playing in wild card weekend. I think it makes it more exciting. It definitely makes the playoffs more interesting. I think the old format was still the best with 6 teams, 2 wild cards, 2 bye weeks, but I think the fact that
it was
3
so beautiful and elegant before.
It was,
now it's...
but they also added the extra, 17 game, which messes up my mind. Like,
screws everything up. I mean, I don't mind the extra football. Don't get me wrong, but mathematically, it just makes it all ugly.
Yeah, I mean,
it's all super ugly. 7 teams and 17 games, and
yeah,
it's all leading towards 8 playoff teams per division and 18 games. Like, that's, I think, where we all assume it's heading towards.
Crazy 8s.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can dilute the talent anymore. There's already people rolling out some pretty bad quarterbacks. But that feels insane to me as well. Like, America has 340 million people, something like that. There's not 32 good people who could do that job. 32?
I think
one out of like 1,000 people can't do that job.
I mean, you'd think that, but also at the same time, it's such a pressure-packed position that there is some mental fortitude that you have to have, because we've seen like highlight reels of guys in college like just destroy players, destroy
right.
teams,
But
like,
name
take
another
over.
job where only 1 out of 10 million people can do it well. 10 million people.
I think the thing that makes it hard is because it is so limited. Because we've seen guys like in a pocket that go untouched and they can make the most amazing throws ever. But once you get someone in their face, because they've just never been accustomed to having like pressure and defense and like someone coming and blitzing them from their blind side that they never expected, like it literally changes the game. And that's
I mean, I get it, it's hard. I'm just saying, dude, like how many jobs in the world are 1 out of 10 million people, and barely that.
Really not many.
It's a whole different topic, but I think what that comes down to like the college talent is so varied and it's such a spectrum that you get guys that have not ever been accustomed to playing such tough talent that when they get to the pros, they will fold. And I think that's kind of part of it. They don't create a system. They don't create the system that allows people to succeed, so that instead of just saying like, oh, well, we've got like 20 good quarterbacks that we're starting, then we've got 20 that are really backups, but we still have to start 12 of them.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks to me that there's probably some serious inefficiencies out there. There's probably people who could succeed that are just being passed over because of how the market recruiting happens and whatnot.
Oh,
I refuse to believe there's not 10 more. I mean, I hate him, but Kurt Warner, like that dude was a whisker away from just never being noticed, right? If Trent Green doesn't get hurt, maybe he does fine, like on the bench. I mean, I've talked about this with Austin, and Austin doesn't believe me. If Russell Wilson had gone to the wrong team, he might not have ever gotten a legit. Look, Austin believes that he's so talented that no matter what, he would have like risen up. But there's plenty of people who do well in August but never get a legit shot because people look at your pedigree and your draft pedigree and things like that, and you don't get a legit shot.
Yeah, P-Hawk, Ryan on a bunch of places, like we've talked about that, and this point is, I think, true, is like Russell Wilson's closer to Seneca Wallace as a career that he would have had if not for the coach that he got drafted to.
That's almost an exact perfect analog.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, and we'll talk about kind of Pete and culture and all that kind of stuff now, but that's one thing that sets teams apart is you would never see a Pete Carroll Seahawks team run a QB sneak at your own 4-yard line in your own red zone on 3rd and 9. Like, you would never see that play. That's just giving up. But that's what the Giants did, and, Joe Judge got fired on a Tuesday instead of a Monday, but we have questionable calls, questionable timeouts, questionable challenges, questionable play calls with Pete all the time, but we've never said, oh, he gave up in that moment. He's not competing anymore. He's stopped. He's given up, and that's kind of like the difference. And I think that's something that is very unique to Pete, but it'll be interesting to see, because that's going to be a big challenge this year, I feel like, because, we're in a situation that maybe we didn't expect the team to be in at the beginning of this year.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Well, the Seahawks finished the year strong with 2 wins against the Lions and the Cardinals, and played the role of spoiler by denying the Cardinals the chance for the NFC West crown. Some will question if these 2 games mean anything for 2022, and some will say the flaws of this team cannot be hidden with change looming. We will try and read the tea leaves with the playoffs taking place this weekend for only the 3rd time in Pete's Seahawks career without him. This is the Hawkscast.net podcast, and we're going to jump into topic number 1. And Zeb, I want to know, topic number 1, are you ready for Jody to say run it back, or does there need to be some big changes? I know you had mentioned that you kind of want to start all over, you want to blow it up, but what do you think Jody is thinking in this moment?
Well, yeah. See, here's the issue. Like, I have no idea what Jody's thinking, and she's not giving us anything.
So you're going to project into your Jody brain what's happening with this team.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
You need to take Jody out to dinner this week and find out the scoop.
Well, I'll have my people call her people, and
she might be going to the Rose Garden. You could say, like, look, just Jody, invite me to the suite. Let's chat for a little bit.
No, yeah, I'll holler at her. Just take her to Arby's. Just take her to Arby's. She'll think you're a down to earth man.
You're right. You're probably right. I'm going to pull Jody. I'm pulling her. Here's the thing. This is where the conflict comes in, because yes, 4 or 5 weeks ago, I was like ready to blow it up. And then of course it doesn't matter anymore. And all of a sudden the team looks fantastic. Like, how is it? It's, I'm so frustrated. It's so mind boggling to me that Rashad Penny becomes the best running back in the league exactly when it doesn't matter anymore for the season. You know what I mean? Like 3.5 years of being disappointing, if even being able to get onto the field at all. And now this season, this season is pretty much in the books. We're not making the playoffs. Oh, now he's the best running back in the league. How is that possible? How does that work? And what does it mean for the future? That's the problem. The problem is the guy's clearly running for a contract at this point.
Is it because, Adrian Peterson came in?
It may be because of
the running back whisperer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt that that's helpful, but like, does having Adrian Peterson on the sidelines really turn around that man's career? Like,
yes, it does.
Just like that.
This sounds dumb, but apparently it wasn't even just like what he's saying on the field. Like, apparently, like day one, like Adrian Peterson like walks in and is like they're watching film together, and like the light just comes on with him, and he's like, "That's how you watch film. That's how you prepare. That's how you do the mental preparation." Like, and so like he's always had the physical talent, and maybe he's like practicing a little bit harder because it's Adrian Peterson standing next to you. But now, like, he's got that sort of slide juke to the left and right kind of move. But, like, I think like, you get this mental preparation, like, knowing when you can use it, because all of a sudden he's watching film properly.
Right.
On a tiny little side note, how do you feel if you're Craig Morton and hearing all this stuff lately? Like, that's our running backs coach.
Yeah, right.
You've been working with this dude for, like, 3 years or 4 years. Like, Adrian Peterson comes in and everybody's like, that's the coach.
Yeah. Well, I have no doubt that it's helped having him there, for sure. But let's be honest. Rashad Penny was on the verge of probably being out of football because he just could not play. And
it's the availability more than anything, isn't it?
Yeah, and he's looking at probably, chances are, his one big contract coming up, and I think he ran his way into about the biggest possible contract for himself.
Yeah. A voluminous 96 and Tony chiming in and saying, being healthy was a huge impact for Rashad even being available. I definitely know when I saw him run, I was like, oh, he's down on the ground for like a second. He's done for the year. Like,
right.
I mentioned that somewhere, or like every time he touched the ball and he was not like popping up within a nanosecond, I was like, well, he's done for the year. He broke an ACL, he broke a rib, his arm's broken, like something happened to him. That's what I expected. Tony also chiming in real quick and saying that Seattle was his best NFL experience. He was on, I want to say 3 teams this year, Seattle being his 3rd team. And it's crazy to think that he enjoyed that experience so much. Real quick, Zeb, do you think a change needs to happen? Like from where you were like 5 weeks ago when this looked like a really bad sinking ship, and to where it is now where they run off 2 strong games and they still end the year 7-10. Is a big change looming for you? Like, do you see like, yes, this is at least the one thing they got to do. They can't just like run it back completely.
I don't know. I'm so conflicted now.
Wow,
I really am.
Rashad Penny got you good, man.
No, not just Rashad Penny. Like, look at. I mean, we're going to talk about some of this more specific stuff later, but look at how well that secondary played down the stretch. No matter who was in there, you know what I mean. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't seem to matter which guys.
It's so annoying.
Throw in some guy named Josh, and he's breaking up passes. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know who that guy is. Some guy named Jackson. I never even heard of this guy. Now, it's just
that was like the first
crazy to me.
That was like the first message I got during the game was Birdfinger messaging that like, who's that guy?
Yeah.
So
how's he on the team?
I like to believe that if the season were to just start again this weekend, and we had this squad the way it's playing right now, healthy and fresh, I'd have to believe that this team could be successful. It just looks that way to me. But this could be just, we're out of the playoffs, the pressure's off. You saw the emotion in these guys this last weekend. Have you ever seen a team want to win a meaningless game this bad? Like,
I mean, I've seen it from the other side. I've seen it when like the Rams have nothing to play for, and I've seen it from the Cardinals. I've never seen it from the Niners, but from the Rams and the Cardinals, when they've played us down the end of the season, when they've got nothing to play for,
we're in their Super Bowl.
Yeah. So this was our chance to be that Super Bowl.
Yeah. So I don't know. I still feel like it might be time to move Russ because. Who knows where his value goes from here. If we do struggle again next year, it might just be the safe bet, time to cut ties. But I'm not committed to that like I was a few weeks ago. So I'm interested to see what happens. But at this point, I expect less change than I did a few weeks ago.
Ross, what about you? Like, if you've got Jody's ear and she's saying like, "Hey, Ross, I want your opinion." What way are you leaning towards telling Jody if you're in her ear and saying like
my opinion or what I think she'll do?
Well, let's go with what you think she'll do because I think that's fair that we're all really just like shooting in the dark. And then if you had the chance to guide her, what would you tell her?
I'm going to do that in reverse order. Like if I'm, when you say big changes, I think you mean the big 3: Pete Carroll, John Schneider, Russell Wilson. Yeah, that implies if you're the starting quarterback, you are management. I spent all season fantasizing and hypothesizing about what could happen and what we could do, and now I'm sitting here and going like, you have to bring them back, those 3. You have to, right? But you still can make big changes. I think. I know we turned it around to a large degree on defense. We finished with the 12th best scoring defense, which isn't bad at all.
Is it 12th? I thought it was a little higher than that, but
I think we're 12th.
Still pretty impressive.
And we were higher than that, but we slid the last couple of weeks. But I think you have to change the defensive coordinator, and that's because, like, I feel like it's mostly Pete Carroll and Pete Carroll's philosophy overall that always brings things up. God, this is going to sound such like a Pete Carroll apologist. I cringe to say it, but it's not, the good stuff is Pete and the bad stuff is Ken Norton Jr. But I sort of almost think so, because here's the thing. Jamal Adams is going to be on the team. There's no escaping that. And so you've got to take the chance of finding somebody who can get into Pete's ear with enough creativity and open-mindedness to use him correctly. They were so afraid of it being too predictable this year that they didn't use him correctly. And like I keep saying, like Ryan Neal ended up with more sacks than Jamal Adams did. Ryan Neal does not get paid with Jamal Adams. He doesn't have the talent, I don't think. But he certainly had as much big play ability. So you have to have a defensive coordinator who can get this team playing good defense the whole year. 2 years in a row now, we weren't a good defensive team to the second half. You have to have a defensive coordinator who can get the most out of your best players. It shouldn't be the second half of the season that Dunlap finally comes and makes sacks. It shouldn't be the second half of the season where all of a sudden we can stop teams scoring points. It shouldn't be that Jamal Adams has no sacks at all. And we spent half this season saying, "Oh my God, this guy sucks," when we paid him the most. So I think you can make big changes, but I don't think it means the top three. I think probably the defensive coordinator has to go. I consider the offensive coordinator, but I think he's kind of shown up down the stretch that maybe he just needs talent around him. I mentioned Craig Morton, and maybe it's time for him to go. Maybe new running backs coach. Maybe new conditioning guy. I think there's a lot of I think a lot of position and position group coaching things probably need an upgraded talent. Those are the changes I would think about making.
What are you whispering in Jody's ear?
Get rid of Ken. Get us some legit real talent. I think they've been a little complacent on the coaching side. We don't have a lot of stars coming up anymore on the coaching side. We need some upgrade and some creativity, some youth, some new ideas in the coaching ranks. Take Pete's philosophy and take that and inject it into some new thinking, some younger style stuff, and see what you come up with. I think you need an injection. You need some new voices, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, what's interesting, just to kind of add to that point, is the Seahawks do have like a few former players on their coaching staff. So if you make a move on Kent Norton Jr., I'm not saying that any of those guys are capable to take over the defensive coordinator position, but that's kind of something that I think is always a challenge.
What did Lufa Tutupa do to mess up? Because at one point they brought him in, and he looked like he was going to be, to me, he looked like the way they were treating him, he was kind of like the heir apparent. But he didn't last long. All of a sudden he was gone.
So this is me kind of reading the tea leaves more so than like being an actual source. Because Pete is so heavily invested in the defense, it's going to always be his scheme. So as much as people rail against Ken Norton Jr. and the defense starting slow, Ken is running Pete's scheme, and he might not run it exactly as Pete would because Pete's, he still allows them to be coordinators, but they're trying to run what they think they want Pete to do, or what Pete wants them to do, really. I think there is a potential that if you are a coach or a position coach and you say, like, you know what, if my only chance is to hitch myself and basically just emulate this guy, and then I'm not going to get a chance to like show my design or my scheme or my thought process without having to prove it to Ken and then to Pete, maybe I would rather take my chances somewhere else, and hope that another coordinator, another position coach is going to take me with them and allow me to get my own stamp. So that is something that I've heard from a lot of media people explaining why Pete won't fire guys or why the defense is slow as it started. It's still a reflection of Pete and not a true reflection of Ken Norton Jr.
I mean, see, it's so. There's so much evidence against that. There's so much I think Pete Carroll provides the frame. I think he provides the philosophy and the flavor or whatever. But clearly, the coordinator has a lot to, like Dan Quinn and Chris Richard and Ken Norton Jr. Those don't look like the same defenses at all. I mean, except for like some, cover three, Leo. I mean, other than that, what Dan Quinn does and what Norton throws out there are not the same at all.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say because really we've had 4 defensive coordinators of note Almost.
Do you remember Pete Carroll's first year? Like, we threw out bandits, like, 6 defensive backs out there week after week after week.
Right.
That's not what we do now. And part of that's Pete Carroll himself is flexible, but yeah, even the play calling and whatever, I think that the coordinators have more flexibility than we think.
But we also can look at like few positions where like once this player came into this position, it changed. Like giving Carlos Dunlap more snaps at defensive end in a 4-3 lineup or in your nickel lineup made an impact for Carlos Dunlap. Getting Trey Brown for a hot minute and Sidney Jones playing better and DJ Reid just playing together, that made the corners so much better. Like, I didn't even remember it. Someone had to point this out to me. Our starting corners were DJ Reid, Trey Flowers, and Ahkello Witherspoon. Like, I totally forgot that Witherspoon was even a guy that was even on the roster because it was just, there was nothing of value there. So
that dude's in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, barely. I don't think by his account. But I think it's interesting that these two games, I don't think it should change anything overall because I was never a get rid of Pete guy. There was a moment where I said, like, we really should reevaluate if Pete's the guy. But what Pete does is probably the hardest thing in football. He creates this culture where the players always play so hard for him. Even in all of those losses, they played so hard for him. Someone wrote this on hawkscast.net that if you look at all of the one-score games by Seattle, if they split them, I think they had 5 games decided by a field goal or less. If they split those games, they win 2 more games, they're a playoff team. Like, the margin is so small, but normal Pete Carroll teams, they overcome that margin. They constantly are doing that well. I looked at there's 5 other teams that had a similar point differential to Seattle. So Seattle was a plus 29 on the year. There were teams that were up to minus 50, and some of these teams had terrible records, all by 3 points or less, or 5 points or less, or 4 points or less. And most of those teams, if they just win one of those games, almost all of them are a playoff team. And Seattle was kind of in that position, but they needed like 2 wins of like the 5 that they were in, and they're a playoff team. Like, that's how close it was and how close this Pete Carroll team is. So I am definitely in the run it back category. I'm in agreement with both of you that there are some changes that still need to be made because there are a lot of holes. And for me, what it is, and Birdfinger points out to this, is they cannot wait until week 6 or 7 to figure out what their team is. They need to know who their team is week 1. They need to know the defense that they're going to run. They need to know what the offense is going to look like. And yeah, there are players that are going to be injured here and there, but they should be able to say, like, yes, this is how deep our team is, and until we hit like the 5th player at this position, this is the offense we want them to run. And I think this is like the first year that we've really seen Seattle not win those close playoff games, whether it was due to Russ's absence or Russ's poor play. I feel it was mostly the offense that wasn't able to help secure those wins because I felt like the defense did enough. And Ross, real quick, I looked it up. So Seattle's tied for 9th with 4 teams at 21.5 in defensive points given up. So it's 9 through 12, so, but they're tied at 9. So it's Seattle, Indy, San Francisco, and Arizona are all tied at 21.5 points. But tied for 9th is pretty solid for where this team is and was.
That's a weird statistical anomaly. Out of 32 teams after 17 games, for 4 of them to be tied.
Yeah, it's pretty weird.
It's 366 for the Seahawks and the Colts, 365 for the Niners, and 364 for the Chiefs.
See, that's why. That's why we're the 12th.
We end up being 11th.
Okay, yeah. So Yahoo only goes to the 10th decimal spot, but yeah.
Tied for 11th with the Cardinals. So
okay, and it's still top third in the league. Not bad.
Yeah, not bad. One of the only 2 losing teams with a positive point differential, and we're the highest one. So, it's it's respectable.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on. Russ, I'm going to hit you off with this. Topic number 2. Do you trust Russ and his agent to not restart trade rumors, or will it be quiet this offseason?
They can't help themselves. Unless, I mean, like, there's a possibility that, like, the last few weeks have been an eye-opener for Russ, and he's a changed man, and he is going to play within himself, and he knows about himself, and he knows what he is, and he's just going to go out and do his best with the coach that got him the furthest and took the chances on him and made him what he is. Or he's still Russ, and he still has a baseball agent. And, I mean, like, it was just a couple of weeks ago, they were out there going, like they were releasing stuff to reporters. Like, there was a checklist of 6 things that they gave the Seahawks if they wanted to have Russ long-term, and they didn't check any of those boxes. Is that how that works? And then also, what was the other thing? What was the other thing they said?
What? Like, all the crazy things that they were doing? I can't remember.
I mean, like, they literally were, like, just... They were releasing things to the media, I mean, literally just a few weeks ago, saying, literally, I'm not making it up, they actually said that Russell Wilson or his agent gave the Seahawks, like, a list of 6 things they need to work on. They weren't all specified by the reporter, but there were 6 things they had to work on if that's what they wanted, if they wanted Russ long term. And they're not sure that any of those boxes were checked. I mean, in fact, despite the fact, like, we got the offensive coordinator that Russ wanted, and, you know, whatever. But, man, it really just comes down to, like, what Russ wants. I heard Mike Salk this week make a good point that, like, if you're 10 years into your career in the NFL, normally it's because you really understand yourself and you just focus on what you do well, and that's what you do. But Russ seems to think that he is Aaron Rodgers, and he's Patrick Mahomes, and he's Tom Brady. And he's not. And that's not a knock, because Russ is Russ. Like, they can't do what he does, necessarily. And he can't do what they do. Like, he's him. And he doesn't have to be anybody else. So if he wants to win his way, the way that he actually is, he's the most efficient quarterback in the NFL history. And that's what he's good at. And if he would understand that and recognize it and be satisfied with that, and understand, like, it's a deficiency of voters that people like that don't get MVP votes. That they're, like, people are impressed with gaudy numbers rather than efficiency. Like, move to Japan, man. Like, if he can live with himself, maybe become slightly less Christian and more Buddhist, then yeah, maybe we're gonna have a quiet off season. But I don't know, and I don't really trust it. I don't trust any NFL player. Sorry, like I really like Russ as a quarterback, and I don't dislike him as a person. So, like, I love that he does the children's hospital thing and everything like that. He's not like a bad person. He's not out there doing drugs. He's not getting in car accidents and blah, blah, blah. I get it. But I find him very disingenuous. More than I used to. I used to think that that's just how he is. He's just corny. But now I really, you can't say all these things, but then do the things you're doing. And if you go in an NFL, and this is going to sound dumb, but, like, because there's actually a major difference. If you're an NFL player and you know you're an NFL player, but you insist on having a Major League Baseball manager, knowing how they do things, that's a message in itself. And if that's how you're going to do things, fine. I don't trust it. So I think we're going to have another messy offseason. And I think it's on because Russ can't help himself. That's my thought.
Zeb, what about you? Do you trust Russ to not start some rumors, or is it just in his nature?
What is the point of doing it this way with trade rumors and leaks? And, like, the owners of these football teams all know each other. These general managers and head coaches all know each other, right? Russ, like, why can't Russell and Pete and John and these guys just communicate with each other. And if he's not happy here, then move him. Why does it have to be this weird game? I don't understand it. What is the benefit?
He also wants to be seen as the good guy because that's important to him.
Yeah, but does this make him look better than if he was just?
Well, he thinks I don't know, man. He thinks if he tells his agent to say that, well, nobody will draw the line back to him. Like 1 degree of separation. Like
I don't. I feel like Pete Carroll knows if Russell Wilson wants to be here, and I think this is what it comes down to. If he wants to be here, that's the only important thing. I don't understand all the extra stuff. None of it makes sense to me. If he wants to be here, then you roll with him.
But what if it's complicated? What if he wants to be here, but he wants to be here in an offense that lets him throw 35 to 40 times a game?
Well, then he doesn't want to be here. Because that's not the kind of offense that they tried it for for a little while, I guess you could say. I don't really.
Or let me put it this way. So they tried it, like you said, they tried it, and like maybe what Russ thinks is like, so when the defense isn't doing well, Pete Carroll's instinct is to like immediately shut it all down and say, or like if Russell Wilson throws a couple interceptions, he wants to shut it all down. Like his immediate instinct is to throttle it back, like, oh, keep it under control so that we protect our defense and we protect Russ from his mistakes. But maybe Russ thinks we should be the exact opposite. If our defense sucks, then maybe we should just be outscoring everybody and lighting it up. Maybe he wants the instinct to go the opposite way. He wants to stay here, but he wants to do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of stuff going on and a lot of reasons that he would be or would not be happy to be here or wouldn't want to go somewhere else. I just feel like for grown men, like they should be able to figure this shit out. For it to drag on across seasons and off seasons of uncertainty is weird to me.
Yeah.
I like to believe Russ when he says I want to win Super Bowls and I want to win them here in Seattle, and when he's like point blank, that's all it is. I'd like to believe him, but it doesn't seem that that's necessarily true. And we've talked about this before, and it goes without saying. Players they don't care what team they're on ultimately, right? They're making money. They're playing the game they grew up playing. They're doing what they're good at. They're doing what they're the best in the world at. Sure, there's a camaraderie when you've been with guys for years, and the culture in Seattle is particularly, I think, special, and teams like to be a part of that. But it's a job to these guys, and they can have just as good of a time in Kansas City or in Tampa Bay or in Philadelphia or whatever. It doesn't matter ultimately to them. So I don't know. I do believe that part of Russell wants to be the greatest of all time, and I think that he doesn't know whether that means having the most Super Bowls or having the best stats or whatever. So I guess that's complicated, but it just seems like this should be easier to figure out. So, and it could just be a lot of us reading more into things than there really is, I
mean, I used to think that too, but literally, like when you've got a reporter saying Russ's camp gave the Seahawks 6 things, like that was Jason Cantafora, that guy. He's legit. He doesn't make stuff up. I mean, that means like that really happened. So I mean, everything, but that's I wouldn't feel comfortable giving my boss a list like that.
But then that's also, you got to understand that the media. I'm not, I don't know Jason La Canfora against anybody else, but I've had the local media twist my own words. Right. You know what I mean? So like,
true.
Is it a better story if Russell's demanding 6 things, or is it a better story if Russell has some suggestions? I don't know.
Right.
I think the thing that makes it so tough is we've seen this offseason play out multiple times in a bunch of ways, and it's definitely escalated to what we saw last season. It's pretty easy to expect that something similar is going to happen. I don't expect it to be a quiet offseason. I think what we will see is a lot of, Russ is saying kind of the right things and being that that politician, but his agent's going to come out and say, oh, no. We would totally accept a trade, but because Russ has a no trade clause, we're only going to go to these 4 places, and 3 of those places have a quarterback, so, figure it out. That's very likely to happen, maybe not to that same degree, but that's just kind of the manner in which baseball agents operate versus football agents. Like, there's almost 0 football agents that I think any regular fan really is aware of. Whereas baseball agents, like, there's some that are as famous as some of the, baseball players out there. It's just the nature of that business. What Russ wants is he wants to be in the story. Whether he's doing good things in the community or helping out, different programs or, doing things that are actually very positive, it's always with the camera in mind, that's how it didn't start out, but that's how it's been for the last few years. And it's hard to blame him for taking that advantage and using it, because all it does is it just promotes him. It keeps his name in the news and it keeps people talking about him. I think there's a lot of us that miss like rookie Russ where, no one knew he was going to Children's Hospital every Tuesday. No one knew he was doing all these things in the community. He just did it low key. And he was just like this guy that no one thought would be our starting quarterback, but he's taken us to 2 Super Bowls. I think people feel that he can't do both. He can't be a celebrity and be a great quarterback. He has to choose one or the other. And I think that's hard for a lot of fans to kind of like wrap their mind about, because the expectation is you can only do so many things well without sacrificing somewhere else. And people say like, well, if Russ can't throw across the middle, is it because he doesn't want to risk throwing interceptions, or is it because he's spending too much time with his videographer making a video about, all the stuff that he's doing? I think that's hard. I think it's hard for people to sometimes like work that out.
Personally, I think there are times you can do 2 things, but what I wonder is why? Like, why do you care? Like, why? Like I said, like, I really wish it sounds stupid, but I really wish Russ was like a little more Buddhist. Yeah. Like, why do you care? Why? What does it matter to you? If you are taking care of your family and you're taking care of your job and you're taking care of yourself and you're financially you're taken care of, what does it matter to you what the guy walking down the street in Wichita thinks of you? Like, what? Why do you care?
I mean,
why
Russ cares about it? Like, I mean, I get your larger question is why does anyone care? Like, why is someone value that? But Russ cares about it, and that's the lens that I think we have to look at it from.
And I can't figure it out, because to me, he's so confident, he's so whatever. But to me, that speaks to me of like actually a deep insecurity.
Sure, but that's what it is. It's like he talks about legacy now. He talks about winning multiple Super Bowls now. He talks about chasing,
But that's the thing. Like,
Tom
Brady.
What?
He also says things like trust the process. Then trust the process, Russ. I almost said my own name. If you just do your thing and you do it the right way and you're as talented as you think you are, then just do that, and then your legacy will take care of itself.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but to play devil's advocate, when you are that high and you are in such a competitive field and you have so many people that are trying to take you down and take you out, I think it's hard to be completely void. And I think that's like, maybe that's something that we haven't talked about with Russ, where like, he had like a mental coach who always talked about being neutral. So that way you were never too high or too low. And he doesn't have that guy anymore. And maybe this is the year where we've really seen that impact, where he is like letting all those things influence him because he doesn't have that strong impression. And that's one of the things that I think why Pete is so good for Russ. Like Pete is such a good culture coach. He constantly brings the best out of people. He constantly like pumps up his players. When they make mistakes, he lets it slide. He talks it down. He says it's not that big of a deal. When Earl Thomas flipped him the bird, it was like, yeah, he's going through a lot of stuff. I get it. It's like, man, if my son ever flipped me the bird, I don't care what I was doing, like, we're gonna throw down. Like, I don't know how Pete can do it because it's such a hard thing to do, and Pete does it so well, which is why I think he's so perfect for Russell Wilson. Now, if Russell Wilson doesn't think Pete is the right guy for him, then yeah, it's going to lead to that breakup. And I don't know if we're at that point yet. And I think a lot of it will pivot on what does Russell Wilson want heading into this offseason, and we're going to find out.
Man, like, Russ just needs to boot us out, man.
Fair enough. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to move on to topic number 3. This one, you can go on as long as you want. Ross, I'll probably have to cut you off halfway through, so you'll get just a few in. But Zeb, I want to know, who gets extended? These are the players that have started games for Seattle. So you've got quarterback Geno Smith, Dwayne Brown, Ethan Posick center, Brandon Shell right tackle, 2 tight ends, 2 running backs. We have our free safety, 2 corners. We have our utility guy and Ryan Neal. We've got 2 defensive tackles, and we've got a DN. These are all free agents. The Seahawks are flush with cash this offseason. But Zeb, who's getting an extension if you're the GM?
Well, I think that we got some question marks now. I think Diggs deserves a contract, but that injury is obviously concerning. What they're saying about a 4 to 5 months rehab. What if he can't run like he used to? You know what I mean? It's a big injury. Like we see Tyler Lockett had something similar. He's not as fast as he was before that. So I'm going to go ahead and err on the side of Diggs being able to come back 100% fully healthy and good enough to, to maintain his high level of play. So I'm bringing Diggs back. He's probably getting the biggest contract of any of the guys I'm bringing back. I'm letting Brandon Shell walk. I'm letting Gerald Everett walk unless he wants to come back on a super cap friendly deal, but I think somebody else will probably pay him a little more. Let's see. Obviously, I don't want to go down the entire list, but I'm bringing back Reid for sure. DJ Reid is probably going to make himself some decent money, but I think he's the kind of guy that you want to keep around. He's young. He can be probably that guy for us, that our best cornerback. I'd like to bring Sidney Jones back as well. In fact, the whole secondary, if we can find a way to bring most of those guys back, I wish we could get rid of Blair right now, but that's not going to happen. I'm bringing back Posick. I think we can get him on a fairly friendly deal, and I think he improved over the season, and I think the way that offensive line seemed to gel, I think it'd be good to keep as many of those guys together as possible. I'm giving Dwayne Brown, a chance to come back, depending on the numbers. But I'm also ready to look for the person to take over for him. So, one more guy I want to mention, Rasheem Green. I don't know where he's at, what his value is at. He's very young still.
He's only 24.
Yeah, and he's been consistently one of the better of our young players on that D-line. So I'm looking at trying to get him extended as well.
Ross, what about you? You looking at huge players, not only in personality, but performance and impact to the starting lineup. If you had to pick a few guys that you feel the Seahawks have to extend, who are you bringing back?
Kind of like Zeb said, like if you played in the defensive secondary this year, I'm bringing you back. I worry about the price on Diggs. It used to be like when you had this injury right here, that meant your value tanked. It doesn't mean that anymore, really. People trust the docs to get you back. But yeah, I'm bringing all those dudes back. I'm curious about how much Everett wants. Technically, by the numbers, he had a career year, but like it didn't feel like that. And there was a game where he personally basically had 3 turnovers.
Yeah.
So I've never seen that from a tight end. To have 3 turnovers in a game, you kind of have to be a quarterback, occasionally a running back. I've never heard of a tight end having 3 turnovers in a game. I don't know. It's a very quiet career year. Who else am I bringing back? Is Green done? Was that it?
Rasheem Green is I think the only defensive end that is a free agent on the roster. Yeah.
Okay. So that dude made himself some money then.
I mean, it was a quiet 5.5 sacks.
I don't know if it was that. Isn't it 6.5?
6.5.
Yeah,
6.5.
I'm not sure. I mean, there was games where he disappeared for sure, but there were games where he was like borderline dominant.
Yeah.
It's very much a matchup thing with him. He's not going to be like a super, super dominant. I mean, that means he had more sacks, by the way, than like Frank Clark this year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Frank Clark had 4.5. Mm-hmm.
Loser.
Who else am I bringing back? Who else was in that list? Like, obviously anybody. Posick, I'm divided on. Like, I think we need to upgrade center. I think we need to like seriously upgrade the offensive line again. But I do appreciate that Posick came in, and although he's supposed to be a better pass defender than run, probably because of his line calls, I'm guessing. But he helped us get a push on the line. Posick came in, and the running game got better. Right around like AP and Posick, man, like the keys to the running game, I guess.
AP, EP.
You know who none of us have mentioned yet?
Yeah, I was waiting for my turn, but I'll let you do it, Zeb.
Oh, I was going to say, Sammy, I guess it's up to you.
No one's talked about Rashad Penny, and I think rightfully so.
I'm not quite done. I got two more.
All right.
I think the backup quarterback Gino didn't do himself any favors last week.
Nope. Tony said that Gino's gone after the DUI.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, dude. Like, now you're going to be suspended even. Like, if you're not available but you're just the backup, then what are you?
Yeah.
So we got to find a new backup now. And, yeah, of course, Penny, I got to take issue a little bit with Zeb said earlier in the podcast. Penny, except for last year, his career stats are really, really good when he's available.
Well, when he's available.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, but when he played, he actually played well. He averages,
he plays well when he gets like 15 carries.
He actually played. I mean, he played a bit more than people give him credit for his first 2 years, and it wasn't like he's injury prone necessarily. Remember, one of those injuries was like an ACL.
Right. Okay, so that knocks him out for a whole year.
You happen to get an ACL, like, dude, that's like his rookie year, he had 85 carries for 490. He averaged almost 5 yards a carry. His sophomore year, his second year with Seattle, he had 65 carries, almost 6 yards a carry. I mean, I'm a believer. He sold me. Opened up the checkbook, pay Penny, fine. That's where we're going. I think cut Chris Carson. You didn't ask. He's not on the list. cut Chris Carson. Cut Bobby. Don't even want Bobby back. I'm sorry.
Oof, that hurts.
It hurts, but you know what?
We're not talking about cutting people today. We're talking about extending. So we'll let Bobby stay until Russ has to cut him. But
okay.
I think what's interesting is I look at all these players that are on the roster, and the people that I feel that the Seattle has to make a decision on is they have to make a decision on Diggs. It's a 4 to 5 month recovery, but everyone said that because it didn't impact any ligaments, he should be able to run free. Basically, they said it's the same injury that Dak Prescott had, and everyone said that Dak Prescott has had a great year. I haven't watched a lot of Cowboys, but he hasn't died yet, so I assume he's all right. My priority, number one, has to be Quandre Diggs. The fact that on the TV...
How much can you spend at safety, though? How much can you spend at safety?
If you can get him for $12 million, I think that's a deal.
So you want to spend $30 million a year on 2 safeties?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to, but we're stuck.
Yeah, I mean, it's all relative, but one of the biggest things is everything in Pete Carroll's system is always having that cover high, that single high safety.
I mean, I get it. I mean, I love safeties, and I love, I only almost exclusively buy safety jerseys. That's cool. But I'm just saying, looking at the big picture, you're talking about investing $30 million at safety.
Yes, and here's the thing. It's $30 million I'm investing, but those are both premium players at what they can do. I think.
Are they?
Yeah, I believe so.
Jamal's premium?
Yes. I think for...
What? What does Jamal do that's premium?
I think when used correctly, because when we show, and that's the question, which I think is a fair question, when we use them properly, and I think Diggs has shown himself that he's used properly all the time, because Seattle rarely gets beat deep, which is his biggest responsibility, which is why he needs to be retained.
I've got no objection. I will not even play devil's advocate on Diggs.
But with Jamal, I feel that Jamal, before he got injured, was playing better and better and better. I never saw Jamal as like this huge liability in coverage or our biggest weakness on defense. Our biggest issue to me was our lack of pass rush and our bad cornerback play. Jamal was like the fifth person. I was more worried about Bobby at the beginning of the year and Jordan Brooks than I was about Jamal's play. So I still view Jamal as a top player on the defense, and I think that he can come back to being that top tier defender that we saw in his first year. I know that he has the whole we traded 2 first rounds and we lost Bradley McDougald. I know he's always going to have that clout over him. Sunken cost to me. That's what it cost to acquire him. It's too late to go back and change it, no matter how much I would probably redo the trade if I could. So I'm not going to think about that now because there's nothing that we can do. I'm not going to just cry about spilt milk. So that's the way that I view it. But yes, I think the value in retaining Quandre is so important, because what that means is if we can get Quandre back, we can make a fair offer to DJ Reid. And if we can't get DJ Reid, Sidney Jones played pretty solid at the end of the year. I don't think he played great the first half of the year, but towards the end of the season, he was playing really solid. And if Trey Brown could come back healthy and we get another corner, we might be into the same situation where our secondary gets better as the year progresses, but that's a much better position to be in than to say our corners just suck and, we're just going to have to hope that the quarterbacks can't hit the side of a barn. That's how important I think Quandre is. He allows our corners to be a little bit lesser than what we would need them to be.
100% agree. That's what I've been saying forever.
But that's my priority. I mean, if you can bring back Posick, if you can bring back Dwayne Brown, great. I'm not gonna hold my breath if those guys can't come back. I'm totally not interested in bringing Penny back. I think I'm more along your lines,
really?
Ross. Yeah, and this is the reason why is he's played 37 games in 4 years.
Yeah, but again, that's not a trend necessarily. I don't believe
it's not a trend. He and to the devil's advocate point, Chris Carson's never played a full year either. So it doesn't mean that I want both of them back or it's one or the other. I want us to invest in running back. If Penny can come back on a deal for less than $5 million a year, great. A prove-it deal that gets it up to $8 million, sure, no problem. But
there's nothing about his ACL that makes it more likely to burst again, dude.
But if I'm watching him, even in this great stretch of 5 games where he racks up 600 yards, and I'm thinking every time he falls, I'm worried that he's broken again.
But I think that's no offense. I have the same thing, but I think it's a gut reaction. It's an irrational reaction. It's not really responding to what's actually happening. He wasn't injury prone in college.
He wasn't.
And then again, the ACL doesn't count. That's just a fluke, weird thing that happens in football. So if you take out that ACL, then
But the way that I would look at it, for this theoretical $5 million that I would spend on Rashad Penny, I'd rather spend that capital on a draft pick or picking up another free agent running back.
You can't buy a draft pick.
Well, no, I'm saying I'm using the capital instead of the money on Rashad Penny, I'm spending on a draft pick, and that money's going somewhere else. Maybe it's going to Diggs extension. Maybe it's split between
But we have
Ethan
money to
Posick or
do
something
all.
else. What's that?
I mean, I'm just saying, like, I get it. I understand if people are hesitant, but I'm saying, like, if you've already found your running back and it's just a matter of money, fine. Now your resources to bring in new players can be brought. I mean, we only have
But
a limited number of draft picks.
Sure, but the other historic thing is teams don't spend on other players' running backs. Like, that's kind of like the thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why it's probably reasonable we get him back for pretty cheap anyway.
Right, and
It's cheap. I'm taking him back if it's cheap.
Yeah, but
that's
like cheap is relative, right?
Right. My concern with Penny isn't that he's injury prone, but it becomes a question of work ethic and conditioning to me, because we know that he's a little overweight, and he has consistently been a little overweight. I mean, we've seen him walk into the team bus with a bag of fast food in his hand. What if it's more something like that he look, like, again, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, but he got good when it really mattered for him. You know what I mean?
When the team didn't need him in the same way.
Right. Exactly. It didn't matter.
Well, he didn't get chances this year till then either.
He was hurt a lot. He's been hurt a lot.
I mean,
the whole time he's been hurt a lot.
They put Alex Collins out there in front of him, and Chris Carson started the first four, and it wasn't till I mean, I get what you guys are saying. I totally understand it, but
it's a concern that when a guy knows he's looking at his last chance at a payday, he starts hitting home runs. I don't know. I have to consider that in deciding whether or not to pay this man.
It's true, and it's one of these things where as fans we never have all the information. We don't know how much of this is the offensive line really improved, because the thing is, all the running backs they all seem to step up their game, but again, AP came into the time, Posick took over as a center midway through the season. I mean, and then at one point, Pete Carroll essentially challenged Penny. He said it in a positive way, but he challenged. He said, Penny deserves a chance to be the starter and to show that he can be a starter. And when he said that, all of a sudden, Penny showed that he can be the starter. So it just depends on what you want to focus on, I guess. But for example, you guys saying it's not necessarily about the injury, but again, the fact that he has in the past tore his ACL doesn't mean he's any more likely to sprain a ligament next year or to break a leg next year.
No, I think that's fair. I'm willing to give Diggs a contract, and he had a gruesome injury. But the reason why I'm not giving Penny a contract is not about his injury. It's just about what is his focus, what is his availability, and do I want to overpay for that? And that's the question that I think makes it so that I am more interested in starting over at running back and hoping that everything else is the same and we can improve upon that, versus hoping that Penny has not just made it about running on a contract year and that's the only time that we're going to see him be really successful.
I want Penny, but it doesn't mean I'm done with the running back room then, because when's the last time we've gone through a year and only needed one running back, right?
I mean, we're going back really far.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in other running backs, but I also think we have so many holes that if you think you possibly have already filled one, then fill it with that, and then focus on what else, because you're not going to hit on everything. Statistically, you're going to miss on some stuff. So stuff that's filled, treat it as filled. Let's get on, and then let's fill the other holes. Let's get back to the Super Bowl. I think we're actually probably a playoff level team right now. Just weird things happened this year, but I want a Super Bowl again, and we have to reload. And if I'm already done a running back, I'm already done a running back. I have the guy who is the best running back in football for the last 5 weeks. Cool, let's move on.
Yeah,
that's how I look at it.
I think it's fair.
Yep. All right, let's wrap up and we'll go to topic number 4. We've kind of already covered a little bit because we've just covered so many things. But Ross, topic number 4: which position group really impressed you by the end of the year, and which group really needs an overhaul?
The defensive backs. I could even cut it down. The cornerbacks really impressed me this year. And I think we need a lot of work on the defensive line still.
short, simple.
Yeah.
Didn't expect that.
Damn.
I agree, but I'll go with, I think the offensive line impressed me in the second half of the season, in particularly. And I believe that we need, with the exception of Travis Homer and maybe Penny, some new running backs.
Yeah. I think it's hard to kind of like pick anything other than those. So just to kind of like add an additional thing, and it's not actually a position group, but it's the linebackers. I thought the linebackers wouldn't be as good as they were. I thought Bobby definitely improved as the year progressed. Not like classic, all pro Bobby, but I thought he was definitely better. But Jordan Brooks really by the end of this year, I thought he was one of our best defenders on the field. He was making the tackles that he needed to. He was hitting the line of scrimmage like really well. He was seeing like running backs coming out of the backfield really well. So I think the linebacker group played really well towards the end of the year. Unfortunately, Bobby obviously got hurt, but Cody Parkinson in that Cardinals game, I thought he played really well. I don't have really high expectations of Cody because we still have Bobby on the roster, and everyone assumes that if the Seahawks make a move on Bobby, that Brooks is going to move over to the middle linebacker position, which is going to move Cody Parkinson to somewhere else. But I thought
I changed my mind on that, though, man. Because Cody played really instinctually at middle. He played better at middle than he ever plays on the outside. So
yeah, so it's I think that's a group that maybe doesn't get as much attention because we already have such high expectations with Bobby there. But to see it without Bobby, I was really happy. And just as a group overall, I thought the linebackers played better as the year progressed. Obviously, the ones you mentioned, they deserve more credit, but I'm just going to add that. A group that needs an overhaul, tight ends, man. Like our tight ends, I have no confidence in them. They like disappear for games. Gerald Everett loses concentration sometimes. Like Will Dissly doesn't do anything. He doesn't catch the ball sometimes. Like he makes great catches other times. Nothing about our tight end group impresses me. The one thing I think they did well is they were very good at run blocking, but just as an entire group, that's something that we need to overhaul because, two of them are free agents, but I just don't think they add anything to the team. If their best skill is that they can run block, then, I'd rather run a sixth lineman out there than a tight end because we're not going to throw to him anyway. So I feel.
But is that a position you want to throw money at with our offense?
It's a tough question because it comes down to if we're not going to pass to them anyway, like if they're just not a weapon that we can utilize, then I would rather invest in the offensive line and run a sixth lineman out there. That's the way that I see it.
I 100% agree with you.
Spending $7 million on Gerald Everett is kind of like a huge waste, and the fact that we did it back-to-back years with Greg Olsen, Gerald Everett had a better year than Greg Olsen did, but that's still $7 million that I would have rather spent somewhere else. Like I would have used that money and started an extension on Diggs or, DJ Reid if we could have last year, instead of being in this predicament where we're thinking about like, oh, can we even keep one or both of them? Birdfinger chiming in and say Parkinson seems like someone that Pete has had faith in. Yeah, Cody Parkinson was a guy that everyone in the media was talking up. Pete was talking him up all preseason. Obviously, we didn't get to see a lot of these guys play extensively, but then he got hurt. He's kind of been a no-show. I think a lot of people mistake him for Luke Wilson because he's got the long brown hair. But this is going to be year 3 for Parkinson. So yeah, I mean, if he doesn't show it in year 3, he's likely not going to show it ever. So I would like to see the tight ends actually be something that we could consistently rely on, and not just like being run blocking, but actually being a part of the passing game as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And those are our topics for the season. Final thoughts before we get on to our final predictions for the year.
That's it.
I think we said enough.
I'm already into it. I'm already excited for the off season. All this stuff's super interesting and fun.
All right, so before we even get to the predictions, are you more excited for the next year than the way that our year ended last year? Because I remember specifically, we were all pretty upset losing in the wild card round to the Rams. It always sucks to end your year on a loss, but I feel like fans in general, and even this podcast, it's much more upbeat and optimistic heading into the off season than last year. And do you think it's because of expectations or just nowhere to go up from up? Like, why do you think that is?
This feels a little bit like the lesser version of the end of the 2012 season. I do have a lot of hope because of the way this season ended. Seeing the emotion in those players on Sunday gives me hope that we can bring most of those guys back and make a push next year. I'm much more excited this offseason than I was last year.
Yeah. Ross, what about you?
I mean, everything last year just sort of felt surreal. Like, I was upset that we lost, but I didn't even take it sort of that personal or whatever. Like, it just, I mean, part of it was like during the pandemic and the whole season was awkward and weird. And I guess I think I was so distracted by real life even last year that it just didn't have the impact. Whereas this year, I kind of anchored myself onto the normalcy of NFL, and I'm kind of hoping that, this, like Zeb said, that maybe this is a big step towards next year. I think we have a lot of holes, but I'm excited to see how they get filled and maybe even potentially who fills them and who's in charge of who fills them.
Yeah, I'm kind of with both of you. I think that is just the mindset going into this off season. The optimism is because there is stuff to build upon, whereas I feel last year it's kind of like, well, this is like on paper one of their better teams, but we kind of shit the bed at home against a team that we should have been able to beat. Whereas this year it's kind of like, injuries and the team did itself in, but there's a lot of things to build off of. And I think, always ending your year on a win, even if it's on a 7-10 team, has its positives. But moving on to predictions. So we're going to run through some predictions real quick. Ross, who is your NFC winner for the Super Bowl? Green Bay? Zeb, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going Green Bay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love any team in the NFC, so I'm just gonna.
I hate the NFC playoffs.
I like every team in the NFC. Just like none of them I enjoy. So I'm gonna go with the Eagles because they'd be the most obnoxious fans that just that's who would be great to win the NFC.
It would be funny.
How about the AFC? Ross, who you got in the AFC?
I don't know. I like Buffalo, but I don't really I can't really say I've got a good finger on the pulse of any team there that I'm really rooting for.
Okay.
The Raiders would be interesting to see, but I don't want them to see win at all, though. I'm just not into the AFCs. Like you guys were saying, you don't really like that. I'm not into the AFC this year. I don't like the Chiefs. I don't like Patrick Mahomes.
Zeb, what about you?
That sneaker guy, whatever they call him.
Zeb, who do you have in the AFC?
I'm all about the AFC. I'm disappointed Indy didn't get in. I would have much rather had them and the Chargers.
Talking about shitting the bed.
Yeah. But that said, I'm riding with the Cincinnati Bengals.
Me too. I like the Bengals. Voluminous 96 saying they like the Titans. I think the AFC is just more interesting. I think it's because we don't get to see them. They're maybe a little bit more mysterious. But like to Ross's point, I don't want the Chiefs or any of the teams that have been there before to continue to do well. So I'd like to see these young guys get in. So Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals are who I'm rooting for. Who's going to win the Super Bowl, Ross?
Green Bay. I hate it, but Green Bay.
Zeb, what about you?
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is getting it. It's going to really piss me off if the Super Bowl ends up being Pittsburgh and San Francisco.
Ugh, oh, God.
Ugh, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think Green Bay is probably the favorite, so I'm just going to go with the team that I want to win, not that I think will win. So I'll stick with the Bengals.
Nice.
So 3 more predictions. Quick yes or no. Ross, Russell Wilson returns, yes or no?
I am a surprising yes now.
Okay. Zeb?
Yeah, he's coming back.
I think yes. Ross, is Pete returning?
Yes.
Zeb?
Yep.
Final prediction for the year: yes or no? An offensive or defensive coordinator gets fired / let go.
Yes. Probably hear that today or tomorrow.
I think we're running it back, bringing them both back.
Everybody?
Well, both the coordinators. I don't know about everybody.
Yeah, I'm in the reluctant. I don't think anyone will get fired. I think that Ken does what he needs to do. He does what Pete wants him to do, so he's not get fired. And I think that, as much as it pains me, Shane Waldron has earned a little bit more time because he got players. I think he shouldn't need every single player to do what he needs the offense to do. But if that's what he needs, that's what he needs. Just
real quick, I kept saying Craig Morton. That's an old quarterback for the Cowboys and the Broncos, actually. It's Chad Morton. Chad Morton.
Okay.
Is the running backs coach.
I hear you. I keep thinking our running back coach is Sherman Smith still.
That's how it should be, but
it is.
Forever and always. Gentlemen, that is our 2021 Seattle Seahawks podcast, hawkscast.net podcast season. We have plans to be back. We're going to be back in the off season. We may or may not do some playoffs. We'll kind of see how it works out. We'll definitely be back for the off season, around free agency, and before the draft. Go to hawkscast.net and check us out. A lot of fun topics out there. But gentlemen, it's time for some shout outs.
Shout out to you, Sammy. Thanks for holding us down all this time.
I second that.
Like taking care of a pack of wild cats. Ross, any shout outs?
I just recommend. I'm just doubling down on Zebs.
All right, fair enough. Check us out at hawkscast.net. I want to give a quick shout out to Kiwi Hawk, Chris98251, P Hawk, Cyrus, Seahawks 25, Known One, Nabui, Birdfinger, Stone Cold, Tony, Let Them Eat Horse Paste, Acer 21, Malbert, Lyman, Bill A, The Peel Sessions, Northern Sonic Hawk, everyone that's on Hawkscast. Check us out, hawkscast.net. Go check us out at Twitter, Seahawks Podcast, Seahawks Forum. We are the hawkscast.net podcast. With me is Zeb and Ross, and we wish you all a Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.